Hey all, welcome back to Exile Wargaming today, and as always, we're going to be talking about winning with Harlequins in competitive 10th edition Warhammer 40k with a strategy and tactics video on how to best utilize our Harlequin troops. We get a good boost to all of our battle line units with Pariah Nexus coming up, and I figured it's a good time to tackle how we can best utilize all of them. Now, there's a few different ways to run our troop units, and they all serve their own individual purpose. One of the best ways I've found is an MSU small style squad inside of a Starweaver. Another big unit that has been phenomenal for me has been a small squad with a troop master inside of a Falcon. Our other option, and you'll see this a little bit more prevalently through some traditional Eldari lists, would be the full size squads, specifically with Yvraine and or the Visarch. Now, our troop unit by itself, without any character support or vehicles or anything like that, is a pretty solid data sheet for 75 points. We get 2 fusion pistols with Melta 2 inside of 3 inches. We get 4 attacks each with our Harlequin special weapons at -1 AP and 1 damage, but we also get +1 to wound on the charge. So all of our Harlequin troops have lance, allowing them to really punch up into some much more difficult units. Wounding on 5s into monsters and vehicles is pretty solid for a 75-point troop with a bunch of attacks. But the key thing that I like to point out with the troops themselves is this movement of 8 inches. What this does is it allows our troops to disembark from vehicles upwards of about 11 inches. Without that move, it makes some of the charges a little bit out of range when we put it into practice on the table. It gives our opponents a very difficult charge, oftentimes 9, 10, or 11 inches, but in return, our counterpunch is generally around the 6, 7, or 8 inch range, which is substantially easier to make, I believe, by 20 or 30%. Now, one of the most crucial units in our entire army is the Troop Master himself. Without the Troop Master, we're not even battle line, so we need at least one, but I find myself generally running at least 2, if not 3, in almost every single list. He has that 8-inch move, he's only 55 points, but he brings an extra fusion pistol, and he gives each and every one of our troops devastating wounds. Again, this lets us more consistently deal damage when we need to. We combine a troop master with something as simple as throwing grenades. The lethality of this unit skyrockets. So let's dig into a few of the different configurations we can run our Harlequin troops in. One of them would be a small squad inside of a Starweaver. Sometimes we're going to be using a troop master in this unit. Sometimes we're not. That's okay. But the role of this unit itself is essentially to initiate the fight. Get on a point early, give your opponent someone to target and something to deal with so they don't just sit in their backfield, picking up or scoring secondaries. The thing I do most with the Starweaver and these troops is really just engage the fight, or I like to use them to clean up some damaged units, maybe some trash. They're pretty solid at scoring, the Starweaver and the troops themselves. We don't really mind if they have to take a turn off. They're not doing a ton of damage without rerolls or a troop master. But more often than not, we're utilizing them to contest and screen our opponent or move block them from getting into advantageous positions. In this game, we were utilizing our Starweavers really to just engage that fight and allow our opponent something to engage with, hopefully keep them on an objective and keep them from just pushing everything they can into our lines. The Starweavers are something you really can't ignore, especially into light infantry or marine profiles. They can also do some damage against vehicles, but the troop inside with all their fusion pistols and their +1 to wound on the charge can be a big problem for a lot of units. So in this game, you're going to see I ended up moving one of my Starweavers up to this objective, even though it had a full unit of Chosen, squad of bikes, 2 units of Legionnaires inside a Rhino, because without this, they control this entire half of the board. I know that they are not going to be able to bring this down very easily in shooting. So the last thing I want to do is have this entire portion of our opponent's army push out into the midfield, destroy this Starweaver, charge into bikes, get pushed up into my backfield, Who knows? But with this unit here, we give them some different options, something that they can't ignore. So we're going to push on to the point. It ends up doing a pretty good number of damage. We end up dropping all 3 of these bikes. In combination with some of the other longer ranged fire, we bring down a rhino, and then the following turn, it forces our opponent to put all their activations into it, and so on. So this unit really by itself was able to kind of tie up an entire section of our opponent's board. On the bottom portion of this, we had a Starweaver in the Ruin. It started off back here. The troop got out. They're already on this objective. This is what the difference in that 8-inch move does. Instead of us being positioned back here, we are now touching and contesting the objective. If our opponent chose to disembark his troops earlier on the following turn, and our troops, were within a relatively good range, it would have been a different story. But this really takes away our opponent's ability to reliably charge us and allows us to reliably charge them in return. Now, this is a picture from a game we'll be posting here soon, kind of a preview of one of our games into Salamanders. And what we did with our Starweaver here is ended up moving it up and disembarking our troops outside of that 3 inches to move block this entire section of the board. We're playing against more elite armies or armies with a lot of vehicles. This is everything. If you imagine, this could have been a unit of orc trucks or a battle wagon. Right now, it's a Land Raider Redeemer. It keeps our opponent from pushing into this midboard, allows us to stage on our objectives, get into advantageous positions where we can countercharge them much more effectively. Again, that 8-inch move makes all the difference in the world. If one of these troops, let's say this Land Raider, moves forward, it gets out a unit of aggressors. The range that we are positioned at, because we pre-measure, they would have about an 11 or a 12-inch charge. When we get out of our Starweavers in return, we're able to make a much more realistic charge into them. But move blocking is definitely something that we want to utilize our basic troops for. Not troop masters or anything like that, just our standard unit of troops possibly getting out of a Starweaver to do. This can change the entire direction and momentum of the game. Now, one of my favorite ways to run troops is with a troop master inside of a Falcon. The role of this unit is really to finish the fight. It's our big counter-punching unit. It puts down a surprising amount of damage, and we utilize it in the second, third, or fourth turn to really push our opponents off of objectives. The Falcon itself is incredible in Harlequins. For 140 points, we do so much more damage than something like a 125-point Void Weaver, but it also increases the damage and capability of our troops, allowing them to re-roll each and every wound of guys disembarking after the Falcon has shot that target as well. So we use our Shuriken Cannon to fire into a unit. Then our Harlequins use their fusion pistols. They charge, they re-roll their dev wounds, and really get to work. It allows our Bright Lance and our Pulse Laser to do something else somewhere. And it also provides a good, durable platform. Now, I know it's not super Harlequin friendly. I don't think we see Falcons in traditional Harlequin lore. But as the index stands right now, it is very important to be able to pull from the Eldari Codex a little bit and allow them to be that much more competitive. Now, how I use the Falcons is a little different than what most would expect. I am not hyper aggressive with them. I generally use them to get good firing angles and lanes to advantageous sections of the board or sections that I predict my opponent's going to move off into. The damage coming out of these units is surprising, and most opponents kind of scoff at it until they get hit with 6, 7, 8, 9 dev wounds. A Bright Lance hits them for 8 damage, and grenades come as well. So the way that we ended up utilizing them in this game was to just keep them close to the back. We knew that our opponent was going to push up forward like they did with their Catan. We had a Transcendent Catan, we had a Void Dragon, we had a Nightbringer over here, a Monolith drop down. This seems like a pretty hairy predicament for us. But those rerolls ended up doing the trick. So we drop our Harlequins out of this unit here. They end up getting, again, that almost 11 inches of move between the disembark and their 8-inch movement all the way up to here. We fire our fusion pistols in. A couple are within 3 inches. That Melta does some really good damage, and it allows them, those rerolls, to start punching up. Strength 8 is pretty good, but it's not great into most vehicles. We're still wounding on 5s. As well, when we combine that, if we get a hit with one of our traditional troops, like a lead player, and then we use fate dice, let's say, if we really had to on our troop master, we could take a 1 and turn it into a 6 for an auto wound. We can be doing upwards of 10 damage to a vehicle just because of those rerolls themselves. So we end up disembarking our troops here, and we utilize this as a counterpunch. Then we also utilize the Starweaver and this other unit over here, with the Starweaver being in combat, lets our troops get back into it if they wipe the complete unit afterwards. This Falcon ended up letting its troops out over here. We fired shots or threw grenades into a monolith. This unit was able to then charge the monolith and do a good number of devastating wounds and finish it off. So just getting those rerolls does a lot of work. Now, one of the most common units that you're going to see are these full-size 11 or 12-man squads of troops. And generally, you are going to see them combined with Yvraine and the Visarch. Now, the point of this unit is really to help you control the midboard. They will be a primary damage dealer in a typical Harlequin list without bringing a bunch from the Eldari Codex. They're really great at tying up important enemy units. Those 4-up invulnerable saves do some good work. All you need to do is keep 1 alive to keep your opponent in combat, and they generally do the trick. Most often, and one of the bigger roles that you're going to see them used for is as a deterrent and a kind of defender or protector of your other units. Now, not so much with the Troop Master. The Troop Master in a big unit of this ends up doing damage comparable to that of a unit getting outside of a Falcon. Similar in points cost to that other unit as well, but with the Falcon, you end up getting that anti-vehicle and some heavy damage and a little bit more durability. But with Yvraine in the Visarch and that fights first ability, they change the entire game. So let's dig into what Yvraine really brings to the table. She's a phenomenal shooting profile. D6 plus 3 shots, hitting on 2s. They're only strength 2, -2, 1 damage, but they are anti-infantry 2+ and devastating wounds. This brings down 3 wound models like Terminators or even Mega Knobs, as long as they're not in the WA with that 4+ feel no pain. Very, very effective. Her melee is pretty good as well at 5 attacks, strength 4, -3 AP, and 2 damage. When you combine this with the Harlequin Troupe, getting +1 to wound on the charge, she does a very, very good deal of damage here. And every once in a while, you can sneak through a couple devastating wounds. But one of her most important abilities is she gives the entire unit a 5+ feel no pain, so it allows them a good bit of durability against middling fire, single damage fire, and every once in a while, you'll snake through, double 5s or boxcars to, save a model against a 2 damage weapon. But the other thing that makes it very unique is she brings back D3 destroyed Harlequins in the command phase each turn. So she does give them a good bit of durability. Now, the Visarch on his own is a great unit. He doesn't have any shooting, but he has 5 attacks. He hits on 2s. He's strength 5, -4 AP, 2 damage. And then each phase, he can select either sustained hits 2, devastating wounds, or lethal hits. We are almost always selecting sustained hits 2, and he has precision. But the most important ability he has is he gives our unit fights first. And this was the thing that I really overlooked. It allows our big troop of Harlequins to really play a protective role, to play something that our opponent has to fear, and it allows us to protect all of our other units. The troop unit coming out, or the troop unit inside the midboard with 12 troops or 11 troops is coming upwards of almost 60 attacks, plus Yvraine, plus the Visarch himself. Anyone coming in is going to take a healthy amount of damage before they get a chance to swing afterwards. If they are using a character, right? The Visarch could very well handle this. I like to position a solitaire next to this unit and just make it an impossible choice for our opponents to swing into. Played a game against Chaos Space Marines where our opponent had Abaddon inside of a unit of Chosen, and really, if he chose to attack and we used Heroic Intervention with the Solitaire, between the Solitaire and the Visarch, Abaddon would have died before they even began combat. So this unit can do a lot, but the Visarch by himself is just a Marine killer. Now, in our game against Chaos Space Marines, our opponent was utilizing a big, durable brick of Chosen with Abaddon. They had 4-up invulns. They also had 5-up Feel No Pains from shooting. There's a lot of attacks coming out of this, and this unit would annihilate most on the table. But the Visarch with the Solitaire close by, threatening that precision and being able to fight first really changes the dynamic of this game. I think traditionally our opponent would have pushed towards the mid board and then just attempted to crash our lines afterwards. He ended up having to take the roundabout way up towards this top objective here. There is zero incentive or 0 point for our opponents at any juncture on the first couple turns to move into the mid board, knowing that they're going to have to fight this unit and anything else that decides to collapse on them. So it really does change the dynamic of the game. In our game against Grey Knights, we just used the big Harlequin brick to hold the objectives, score some primary points, be a deterrent in the mid board. They did almost nothing in the realm of damage until the last turn of the game, and that was perfectly fine. What they did was affect the board state more than anything else. In our last game, I won't show you how it ended, but we waited a couple turns. We used this Harlequin brick again to be a deterrent in the middle, keep our opponent from staging or scoring any points on the center objective. And then when it came time to push, when all of our other units were staged and ready to go, we ended up moving this unit out as well. We did a little drive-by shooting, killed some units over here, and then we attacked through the rune. Harlequins have very small bases, and it's very easy for us to get into combat really wherever we want. So we have a ton of different options and ways to utilize our troops, but understanding the math behind them, what each unit is capable of, could make all the difference in the world. So I put together this chart painstakingly, used some dice calculators, a little bit of anecdotal math, sometimes, saying that we wound 4.33 times doesn't work too well, but in this, I really just want to show the efficiency of each one of these units and how you can best utilize them on the table. If we understand how much damage they can do at a given point in time, then we understand how to appropriately collapse on our opponents when we need to. One of the best ways to utilize Harlequins is by just functioning as a single cohesive unit, shifting to one section of the board at a time and allocating your wounds appropriately. So what we'll see here is how troops fare, how troops with a troop master fare, how troops with troop master and rerolls do, how a full troop without rerolls, but this is a 12-man squad with a troop master, would do, and a full troop with Yvraine and the Visarch. Into light infantry, you'll see our common troop do very well. 75-point unit is going to kill roughly around 12 light infantry. These would be Hormigons, Termagants, Guardsmen, anything like that. Strength 3 or Toughness 3 units themselves. Afterwards, when we get into a troop with a troop master, that number goes up significantly. The extra fusion pistol, he gets 6 extra attacks. He's hitting on 2s, and with the lance, if they're targeting a toughness 3 unit, they're all wounding on 2s. This is 16 dead from a unit of something like Termagants. If you combine some Starweaver fire with that, you are wiping out pretty big units, 20-man squads, very, very consistently. Getting into the troop with rerolls coming out of the Falcon, we're doing substantially more than our standard troop without a troop master or even with the troop master himself. Now, the rerolls aren't going to make a huge deal into smaller light infantry units because we're wounding everything on 2s anyway, but it still makes a big difference. The big unit of troops, they're coming in upwards of 60 attacks, is going to be able to wipe right around 36 total between shooting and combat. And then your Yvraine's unit is going to be, oh my gosh, upwards of 45 wounds total. Her devastating wound shooting attack does a good bit. Now, our troop into something like a Marine equivalent is going to end up killing about 3 of them in combat and another 2 in shooting if if we use our rerolls for our fusion pistols. We should be hitting on 3s, making 1, rerolling another if we need to, and we're automatically going to be doing at least 2 damage if we're in fusion pistol range. Now into heavy infantry, you'll see that the damage number falls off substantially. We may kill 1 in shooting, we may kill 1 in combat. But essentially, if you're utilizing these guys with the hopes and dreams of dropping, 3 Terminators, they're not going to make it happen. And then into vehicles, because they do still get Lance, they'll end up doing about 2 wounds in combat. They get -2 AP from the lead player, and potentially 2 wounds in shooting, -4 AP, but we're wounding on 5s, and we'd have to hope for that reroll. So the average did come out to 4 wounds total on a vehicle. Now, the troop with the Troop Master ends up doing a good bit better. We're going to kill right around a 5-man squad of Marines. That's very, very efficient. We're going to end up doing about 27 attacks in combat. We're going to have 3 fusion pistols. It's pretty easy. Getting into heavy infantry, again, this is very, very difficult. Maybe we bring 1 down. We should be able to bring 1 down total, but on average, best case scenario, we're going to bring down about 3 Terminators with a unit like this. Into vehicles, we're going to bring it up to about 6 wounds. The troop with the Troop Master getting rerolls, we're going to start seeing a big difference here. Now, into the Marine equivalents, we are killing about 8 of them on average. Our 125 point unit is able to do a very good amount of work into, the equivalent of 150 to 160 points of guys afterwards. This would also go into something like Votan. Into the heavier units like Terminators, we're very easily able to get 3 in combat and 1 to 2 in shooting. This is why I throw grenades almost every single turn. Instead of leaving a unit at 1 or 2 guys, we have an opportunity to completely wipe it. If we end up adding the firepower from something like the Falcon into that, we very realistically kill 5 Terminators with a unit of troops and a Troop Master coming out of a Falcon. Into a vehicle, this is incredible. Before we throw grenades, on average, we're going to do about 11 to 12 wounds to a Land Raider equivalent. Anything below that, we're going to snake through a couple more. This is, again, why grenades are huge. A full troop is going to wipe out light infantry at a phenomenal degree. They're going to be able to wipe out 10-man units of Marine equivalents. They're going to end up getting about 6 gone from a heavy infantry unit. The devastating wounds do some really, really good work here. Again, devastating on about 60 attacks is very good. And then into a more mech-based unit, because we're now getting 4 fusion pistols. We'd have 5 fusion pistols coming out of a big unit like this. We're going to end up getting at least 5 in shooting. If we use a fate dice on the Troop Master, where it can do a good bit more, but we're going to very realistically be able to bring something down like a Land Raider or Repulsor as well. And then with Yvraine, things start getting a little bit different. It skews a little heavier towards the infantry side as opposed to the mech side. We're only going to do about 14 wounds to a mech unit, but when we get into heavy infantry, we're doing very, very well for ourselves. The Visarch is incredible. We should be able to kill at least 5 Terminators in combat. Yvraine generally picks up at least 1, if not 2, in shooting, and then we have, again, 4 fusion pistols to make that happen afterwards. Very, very realistically, this unit will be able to tough it out and at least tie up a big unit of Terminators or Mega Knobs or whatever it is if you're using them to protect some of your other units. So at the end of the day, each one of our units really does have the ability to punch up. I know people say Harlequins don't do that much damage, but when we think about it and we put it into perspective, we do just enough on any given turn. We're not overkilling anything at all, but we are doing more than enough to keep us competitive on the board. So I hope this helps. I hope this puts a little bit more perspective on how to best utilize our troop units. They bring so much to the table. They're very, very versatile. With the metagame being what it is now, not knowing if you're going to go into a mech-based list or something like Bully Boys, or if you're going to go into something like Unending Swarm or Green Tide, having a good, well-rounded army could really make the difference. In Pariah Nexus, I think we finally got something to push in our direction with battle line troops getting a little bit of a bonus. Being able to flood our army with 5 or 6 units of Harlequin troops seems pretty good. I don't necessarily see Harlequins themselves making a play as a standard troop, because you would have to choose the troop master over the autarch. But on the Harlequin side of things, I think we're doing very, very well. The best piece of advice I can give anyone, especially with the new missions coming up, is figure out your distances to your objectives on the first couple turns, your angles on the new terrain layouts that'll be coming out, and just pre-measure, pre-measure, pre-measure. The best thing about our Harlequin troops is really and truly the lance and that 8-inch move. It makes things very difficult for your opponent, and it allows us to stage much more effectively when we want to push back or we have that final go turn. Those extra 2 inches could end up making the difference of having like a 25% charge or like a 50% charge, which is monstrous. So again, I hope this helps. I hope this gets you an idea what it looks like. I hope you're pulling the Harlequins off the shelves and we get them ready for Pariah Nexus. I'll talk to you guys in the next video.